Hey, what's up? Well, I'm making another video, and as you can see, I have my telescope right there. And one thing I want to talk about, let's see, I don't really have much time to lead into this video, but I hear the train again. And what I want to talk about in this video, I know you probably think I'm sick, but I'm not. I just kind of been sleeping, and as a result, I don't know what it is, but I probably should put that silly light on. Yeah, that's much better. It just makes me sound like I have a frog in my throat. Um, but I'm not sick. Okay, even though we are in December, I am not sick. And what I want to talk about in this video, real quickly, hopefully, well, yeah, it's very discouraging to order anything in the month of December. You know, as much as I would like to have stuff, I get bombarded daily with deals here, deals there. But it's like, why would you want to order something when it takes forever to get it? All because, because it's the holidays, and obviously they can't really, they have more people working, but yeah, it's still hard to get stuff out within a few days. So it's like, why would you order it knowing you may not get it for a while? So anyway, what I want to talk about in this video is how I just always assume that children are sick. I keep forgetting to mention that because I get so sidetracked with the other stuff that I say. But always assume, it just really makes me angry. People that think it's like when their child goes through some serious illnesses, in many cases, they may be even hospitalized or something like that. And then they get a little bit older and they stop getting sick as often. Well, the parent kind of develops a mentality that if they're not burning up or throwing up, then they're not really sick. Like if it gets to the point where, like, many years after they're hospitalized, they develop some immunity and they start to have just normal colds, that don't go into ear infections, that don't go into bronchitis and all these other complications. Like I never had any more of those complications, knock on wood, in my second decade of life, of all things. Like age 9 was the last year that I had like bronchitis. And I think the only time I really had ear infections was like kindergarten and first grade, ages 6 and 7, because I didn't go to daycare or anything like that when I was under 6. And so my second decade of life, I started to really not have these complications. And I didn't even go to the doctor for any of these colds, but that does not mean that I didn't have any. Well, it certainly doesn't mean that. I know for sure, I know for a fact that I had 35 in my teens. And with that being 7 years, that's a mean average of 5. Okay, in those first 3 years of my second decade, 10, 11, and 12, I remember 5 at 11, 7 at age 12, so that's about 6. So let's just say even if age 10, because I know I remember having at least 3 of them at age 10, so that's at least 50 colds right there. My second decade of life, so that's the mean average around 5 or more colds. Well, parents have this misconception that if the child is not sick enough to go to the doctor, then they're not really sick, and you shouldn't be afraid of them. Well, I absolutely am. And the way that I regard children, I just always assume that all children, especially boys in particular, but girls too, just regard all children like as if they're sick at all times. Always, always, always. Always think of them like they're sick by default. Like even if they don't have any symptoms whatsoever of an illness. Because, there is something called a subclinical illness wherein you're infected, but you don't really have any symptoms, or you have symptoms that go away after 12 hours. Without progressing into a true illness. And I don't count those, because if I did count subclinical colds, then I would have to say that I had 5 colds in the 7th grade, August, November, January, April, and May, because I had a subclinical one in April before that unforgettable one in May. And I would have to say that I probably had at least 2 of them at age 22. My first year was just 1. I had a subclinical one in December and a clinical one in March. And age 21, I would have to say that I had about 3 of them. I had clinical in October, subclinical in January. The last time I think that's the last time I've ever even been slightly sick in January. For some reason, that month is kind of an off time for me. I don't know why. And then I had, of course, a mild clinical one in May. So I guess 2.5 colds, really. So, there's been a few subclinicals along the way. And a lot of times, that's what happens. You can be infected with a subclinical virus. And that means that you don't have significant symptoms, but you can still transmit it to people, even so. Like if you sneeze on someone just from what you think is allergies, you could have a subclinical virus, and I think that's how a lot of colds are spread. So always, 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 always regard children like they're sick by default. And, don't ever drink after them. Don't ever kiss them, like I said in that song, and that's why I've planned my whole entire life. My whole entire life has been structured around not having children because I don't want to be, another statistic. I just hate the way that, people want to protect girls from everything but the absolute worst that this life has to offer, and that's childbirth and motherhood. And so it's like you protect girls, you tell them not to go out in the cold, which is ridiculous because that isn't what causes colds. You tell them to wash their hands all growing up and to try to avoid, getting sick all throughout their childhood. And then they become mothers at some point, and then the kids bring home everything to them as a mother. And because they did have a slightly lower number than boys growing up, well, guess what? Mom will have a slightly higher number than dad, because not only is she more hands-on in dealing with the kids, she didn't build up as much immunity as a kid, from being sick more often, like boys. And so, it just all goes back to that thing about the Native Americans and, about likening daycare kids to the Europeans and non-daycare kids to the Native Americans who had never had smallpox, and I'll never forget the first teacher to ever say that. And so, I made a song about him, and I might include that. But yeah, just always treat children. I've learned as an adult, because see, the thing is, I don't really mind the fact that I was having 5 colds a year as a kid and a teenager, or 5 or more, probably through the age of 20 is about the official age. Between age 20 and age 21 was the biggest turning point. And then another turning point was like from 23 to 24. When I went from age 20 having 4 colds to age 21 only having 2 milder ones and then a subclinical one in January that I don't want to count. Then age 22 I only had, I guess, 1.5. Well, I say 1, because the one in December was subclinical. And age 23 I had 2 mild ones in August and May, last time I would ever get them that early and late in the school year, and then a more severe one in November, and that one put my sister almost in the hospital. She had to go to the doctor and get on antibiotics for bronchitis, and that's a long story. But then after that, it was never multiple colds. So between my immune system developing and my sister's immune system developing, in the mid-aughts, I know from personal experience that just as when children are added to the family, the colds increase. When children, so to speak, are removed from the family, either by going through puberty or leaving home, then the colds decrease as well. So yeah, I would hate for that to be my life, to suddenly have more colds during some part of my adult life because I had children. So I just always treat all children like they're sick at all times. And I'll go ahead and post this video along with that song about that teacher that taught that about the Native Americans for the first time.